Welcome back, 3DMJers, to my 2025 contest prep vlog. It is going to be quite the episode because I am now reflecting on my true pro debut that I just had on October 4th, competing at the 2025 WNBF Taiwan Asian Championships and Pro Diamond Cup. This was such a cool experience. And let's just say I've got a story to tell. All's well that ends well, but a few disclaimers before we start. One, much like my last episode, where I shared some things about bowel movements, there's going to be a continuance of TMI, but I promise it is not just for shock value. It is relevant to the story I'm going to tell. And two, if you are squeamish at all with a little bit of blood, I am going to share some images of an injury. So just be aware of that. Those two things are coming. And they're not related, just to be clear, the blood and the other thing. But like I said, all's well that ends well. So as I am recording this, it is now a little bit more than 1 week post-show, and I am under 4 weeks out from the WNBF Mayhem, which I'm going to be doing on November 8th as my second show of the season in Sacramento, California. Yes, that is the show that I've done many times, and that we as 3DMJ have done many times together, and I'll be competing alongside some of the other 3DMJ coaches, which I'm stoked about, and then also WNBF Worlds in Los Angeles, which I'm doing 2 weeks after that on the 22nd and 23rd of November. But let's go back to where I left off in my vlog that I released that was just 1 week out from the show. I had just gotten back from my trip to Europe, and you may recall that I talked about my time in both Bali and Europe and the travel I did and how I traveled across 3 different time zones over a span of 2 weeks. I got back into New Zealand on September 17th, and my first morning weigh-ins were 80.1, 80.2, and then before I knew it, it had ballooned all the way up to 83, and it had been a week since I'd had a bowel movement, and I seemed to be retaining a lot of water. My urination frequency was still down, and my physique was just looking like I took a 6-week step back in condition. It was really quite the shock. And then fortunately, just in time for me leaving for Taiwan, things started to normalize. And in retrospect now, I'm pretty confident that I know what happened. That 80.1 and 80.2 weigh-in were a very dehydrated post-long trip on the plane, 16-hour flight from Doha weigh-in, and then I started to basically retain water for an extended period because of that dehydration, and it really kind of threw off some of my natural homeostasis. That was on my mind. It was a bit of a concern, and some of the things that we were doing to mitigate that, we were going, okay, well, when I fly out to Taiwan, it's an 11-hour flight, we probably want to make sure I keep my hydration high. So I was keeping a pretty high fluid intake when I flew out, and also just controlling my sodium intake. And I am a little bit salt sensitive historically. So with that background context, I wanted to get into Taiwan early to make sure that I had enough time just to acclimate to the time zone and let my body stabilize, and also do my polygraph, get the food I needed, go to the store, and also just make sure I could catch up on any missed sleep. And I was really fortunate that my wife was able to join me there. She has just recently submitted her PhD for examination. She's a real scientist, Barbara. She's actually doing it in geology, not sports science like myself, but I'm just really proud of her. And she hasn't been able to travel with me a lot over the last few years because she's been very focused on her PhD. And we've also had 2 very elderly cats who needed a lot of care. So one of us has typically been staying home over the last few years, but we have historically traveled together. She's an amazing partner. I love her. She's the best thing that's happened to me. And I was very fortunate. Now, unfortunately, our 2 cats have passed away. And she's submitted, fortunately, her PhD thesis. So she's in the process of examination, which means she could travel with me. So we left to arrive in Taiwan on the Tuesday evening before my Saturday competition on October 4th. And again, it's a 2-day show, October 4th and 5th, but my plans were to compete in the amateur classic physique as well as the pro bodybuilding divisions, and those both happen to be on Saturday. Got situated, went to our hotel. I sent in some update pictures and videos to Berto and Brian. We're looking at my peaking strategy. And our plan was to do basically a few days of loading, Wednesday, Thursday, and then bring calories down, tapering a bit on Friday based upon my look and get constant feedback and good lighting, and then see how I looked to modulate my peak week protocol for the Saturday competition. So everything is going according to plan. And I go to bed on this Tuesday evening. I take a sleep aid, melatonin, nothing crazy. I'm just trying to get into the time zone I'm at. But I am feeling a little groggy, a little lightheaded, due to the flight, the change in time zone, and the fact that, when I get up, I notice sometimes I get a little lightheaded normally during prep. This is kind of that reactive low blood pressure, if you will, that is pretty normal during contest prep. But I think possibly due to the flight, the change in time zone, and having taken a sleep aid before I went to bed, it was a little worse. Wednesday morning around 3 a.m., I get up to go pee in the bathroom. And I went quickly. I had to pee really bad. I stood up fast, walked into the bathroom, and I felt faint, and I passed out. And I fell on the image you can see right here, the edge of a stone bathtub. And yeah, if you look real close here, folks, I got a pretty bad scar. As you will see, this was actually a very deep cut, and it was bleeding everywhere. Head wounds are notoriously bloody, even when they're relatively minor. There I was at 3 a.m. on the ground of the bathroom floor, naked, in the dark, and it was stone, and it was a relatively big room that we were in, so my wife didn't hear it. And I'm laying on my back thinking, am I okay? Because I woke up to my head hitting, completely hot dogging from the height of being 6 feet, onto the edge of this stone tile. The type of thing that if you saw it in, a drama or a movie, it would be like, oh, that character just died, accidental death, And it wrenched my neck. My neck was sore. I'm laying on my back, and I'm like, am I okay? And I'm trying to think, okay, did I get knocked out? Do I have a concussion? Can I move all my fingers and toes? Fortunately, I felt fine, but I also put my hand on my forehead, and it was drenched. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to scare the crap out of my wife when she sees that. So she comes into the bathroom, turns on the light, and I unfortunately gave my wife an incredible fright because there's this naked, sprawled out, shredded, dehydrated man on the ground with blood everywhere. So we had to spend about 20 minutes cleaning up the blood. I'm holding a rag to my head to stop the bleeding. It did stop bleeding pretty quickly, and we realized we have a very, very deep gash, but I am okay. And huge credit to just Taiwan as a country, but the quality of their healthcare for someone who, grew up in the States and has been to emergency rooms before, and even living in New Zealand, which is a big step up from the U.S.'s healthcare system, I was blown away. We walked to the emergency room. There was no line, no wait. We got seen immediately, and I got stitches. It costs a total of 125 USD to get the stitches. And again, mind you, this happened around 3 a.m. and it took us 30 minutes to clean up, and then it was a 10-minute walk to get to the emergency room. By 6 a.m., I was back in bed with stitches and actually got another hour of sleep. It was that efficient. So that's how it started, and it really just kind of, threw things off. I was just like, okay, can I still compete? Yes. Is there any issue here? No. I've got the stitches. They told me I could get the stitches out around 5 or 7 days, so I planned to get them out, the morning that we were planning to fly out the following Tuesday. So we had basically just a 1-week trip. So that was kind of the whirlwind start of this competition. And then over the next few days, the swelling was coming down nicely. I was able just to wear a Band-Aid over it, and it was fine. So even though it started really crazy, I disrupted my sleep a little bit that first night, I was able to get on schedule quickly. I talked last episode about all the things you can do to mitigate jet lag. I did all of that again. A few days prior to going to Taiwan, started adjusting our schedule. We took, melatonin at the right time when we were on the plane. I trained when I left. I trained when I landed. And for my peak week strategy, I do a lot of things very normally. So I train every single day, and I even trained the morning of the show. I just went lighter, and my planned stuff was, far from failure, short muscle length, type of training, and less volume than I normally do. I just made sure that it wouldn't do anything that would impede just the look that I wanted in terms of impeding muscle glycogen from being where it needs to be or any of that. But I also really don't think that you need to take multiple days off. I think that tends to results sometimes in inconsistent looks. And really, you want to do what makes your body look good normally. And I look good on days I train. It's something I've always noticed. I just don't want to do something that impedes me in my ability to pose or get glycogen to seat, and muscle damage can cause both of those issues. So, I was training every day afterwards in my peak, and we were just adjusting on the fly based upon my look. I was also a bit concerned, and here's where we get into the TMI. I was a bit concerned that I was going to experience that same post-flight constipation that would even get worse and potentially cause issues during my carbohydrate load. So as I was loading carbohydrates, which was nothing crazy for me, but in the 300 to 350 gram carbohydrate range, right around like the 26 to 2800 calorie range on Wednesday and Thursday, I thought, it's probably not a bad idea, and I did this on Thursday, if I just take a mild laxative. And I had a really nice normal bowel movement later that day. And I was like, this is great. I'll just do this again Friday, no problem. So, it's Friday, it's the 3rd. I wake up, I do my polygraph, get that done and dusted. So now I'm eligible to get on stage, and then we have our athlete check-in. So I go to the venue, the athlete check-in. Remember, this is a huge show, over 350 athletes. So I go there and I'm standing in line, I'm meeting people, I'm saying hello. I've just taken my my post-lunch second day laxative. It's Friday. The carb load is going really well. I look exactly the way we want to the Friday morning. And I actually posted those pictures. A little flat, but really, really crisp on Friday morning. You can see here. And I knew with a carb load and, a little more, of a pump on game day in the afternoon the next day, I was going to look my best ever. In fact, we planned on bringing my food down on Friday to like maintenance or even deficit calories because I look better and I need more time to clean up. But I didn't need it. I was looking better and better and better, so we just kind of kept loading. So we had, 2 days at around 2,800 calories, 300 to 350 grams of carbohydrates. And then on Friday, I had another day at 2,600 because of just how I was looking. And this continued on to the morning of, where I also looked the part. So, morning of the show, I was like, I'm ready to rock. But here was the downside. I'm standing in line Friday, waiting for the Pro Media event after the check-ins, and I feel the stomach gurgling. And I'm like, oh, okay, no problem. My buddy who's with me there, can you hold my spot in line? We're waiting for the check-ins, and I go to use the toilet. And this was not what I anticipated. The day prior, I had taken the laxative, and it was very normal bowel movement. This was not normal. And what I did not anticipate was that taking this mild laxative for 2 days in a row would have cumulative effects. And it was like a colonoscopy preparation. I had one normal bowel movement, and then immediately after, I basically had a bout of diarrhea, just to put it frankly. And it cleaned me out. I could not believe how much came out of me, and I was emptied. And I was like, oh man, okay, well, thank God that's over. No problem. And then I go through the rest of the check-in, and everything's fine. And we have our Pro Media event, which I'll talk about in a second. And then I go home. My wife and I, we have my final peaking carbohydrate load meal, and I'm about to go to bed, and I feel the rumbles again. And this time, this is Friday night, it's not even diarrhea. I would say it was just mostly liquid, and I just voided everything in me. It was like my soul left my body, and I could not believe it, like just how much came out in me in that one day. But it did actually impact me on game day, which I'll get to. But let's go back to the Pro Media event, because this was so cool. And I want to give a huge shout out to WNBF Taiwan, WNBF in general, because in Taiwan, bodybuilding is damn near mainstream. The enhanced side of the sport is actually smaller. It's not seen as the norm. The normal thing is being drug-free, and being an enhanced bodybuilder, even though it leads to like the Olympia and the big names like Arnold and Ronnie Coleman and all that, generally in bodybuilding, that's seen as the main thing. It's a little more like powerlifting, where IPF is the norm. So the WNBF has a huge foothold in Taiwan. They have 2 very, very big shows, and they're seen as like the top tier shows. And WNBF pros are seen as like legitimate pro athletes. I'm not going to claim bodybuilding is so mainstream that it would be like basketball or football in the US. but it's maybe something like track and field or sprinting. And this became apparent to me when I was there last year judging. Zach Chow, who is a WNBF pro and a world champion and a Taiwanese champion, I met up with him. He was just sitting there on his moped, and a random person on the street came up to him and asked him for his autograph. So I thought, oh wow, that's really, really cool. But I didn't understand the extent of it because, you know, Zach's he's a world champion, and he's also from Taiwan. So that's a slightly higher level. I thought, okay, he's won WNBF Worlds, and it's a little more popular here. But this time I really got it. So WNBF Taiwan had this pro media event like they do at the Olympia. They set it up, they live streamed it, they interviewed us, and there were athletes competing in the pro event from all over the world. We all got lauded with compliments and a lot of cool stuff. In WNBF Taiwan, they made us pro tracksuits, which we got to wear, which was really cool. You can see here. And they also gave us, believe it or not, baseball-style trading cards. So yeah, you heard that right. Your boy is a trading card, like I'm a Pokemon or a pro athlete. And we had some time where we sat down and we could sign these, and fans would come up to us and have us sign them, and people could come up to us throughout the show. So when this happened to me, my first assumption was, oh, somebody came up to me and said, hey, did you compete in the pro show? And I said, yes, I did. Thank you very much for acknowledging that. And they said, I'd love to get your signature. And I said, sure. That he probably knows me from my social media presence, my presence as a science communicator for bodybuilding, not actually as a bodybuilder. And then he goes, yeah, can I follow you on Instagram? What's your handle? And I realized this gentleman had never heard of me before and was only wanting my signature because he saw me on the pro stage as one of the pro bodybuilders. Simply, my presence as a professional athlete in natural bodybuilding in Taiwan made him want me to give him his signature and have him follow me on Instagram. And he had, never heard of who I was before that. And that blew my mind. So it made me realize just how cool and what a privilege it was, and also where natural bodybuilding can go if it's given the respect and the resources and the attention that it takes itself seriously. I think other people will take it seriously. But anyway, that aside, had a fantastic Friday. The peak's going well. Everything's looking good. And then Saturday morning, I was looking really, really good. And right where we wanted to be, not flat, ready for a pump to look amazing, getting great feedback from Berto and Brian. And another really cool thing about the WNBF Taiwan show, they had a whole tanning team, and they would put the tanner on you just minutes before you would go on stage. They have two people, and they would just apply the tanner. But the benefit of doing the oil-based tan at the competition is you don't need a spray tan the night before and then another coat on the game day, which is pretty standard practice. Then you have to sleep in it. You have to wear clothes. It's very uncomfortable. Don't get me wrong. Oil-based tan, dream tan, similar styles are really uncomfortable, but I only had to have it on right before I got on stage, which meant that the morning of the show, because I was getting on in the afternoon, I could actually send video to Brian and Berto and let them see how I was looking the same day. And typically one of the hardest things to do, and I can tell you this as a coach, is to assess how the carb load is going once they are in different lighting from when your athlete is normally sending you pictures, and their skin tone drastically changes because they have to get their coat the night prior. But we didn't have to contend with that because it was just going to be an hour prior to getting on stage that I was able to get my last tanning coat on, and they had an excellent tanning team. It was great. Amazing backstage area. The venue for WNBF Taiwan is a massive hotel banquet hall. These two adjacent rooms, huge stage. They had a video track camera, amazing professional lighting, video. Immediately were able to get us, pictures and video. Big shout out to Fitness Taiwan and WNBF Taiwan. Check out their Instagram links where all the pro pictures are. Also, big thanks to Winnie. She was the one who. She's a WNBF bikini pro, by the way, good friend of mine and one of my clients, who was able to get video of all my time on stage, which I'll talk about in a moment. I think the WNBF Taiwan shows are probably some of the best, literally in the world, enhanced, tested, any federation, you name it, that I've ever been to as an athlete, judge, or a coach. Incredible. So, amazing experience. So I went out afternoon, The plan was to get on stage for the pro men's bodybuilding division, and then after that to compete in the classic physique division to see if I could get my pro card. So first things first, and they bring us out individually. The LED screen, it has this sequence that it plays that you can see here in this video. It's got the New Zealand flag behind me because I'm a dual citizen, and that's who I'm representing, WNBF New Zealand, as I'm competing. It parts. There's the smoke machine. There's lights that come out, and I walk on stage like it's the Olympia, and I get to do an individual posing routine. And it was such a cool experience. And then after bringing out each of us pros, then we got into our mandatory comparisons, our muscularity comparisons, our call-outs, and eventually our awards. Very efficiently ran. Now, the bodybuilding division for the men, there were 4 pros signed up. Pro shows are always smaller than amateurs because only a small proportion of people who compete end up turning pro. And the really cool thing that the WNBF Taiwan does is that in the pro qualifying divisions, the athletes who turn pro can immediately then compete in the pro division later that same day. So the open bodybuilding, there were hundreds of them, literally. They had a total of, I believe, 5 or 6 weight classes, and either the top 2 or the top 3 all went into the overall. They only give 3 pro cards, meaning that out of these hundreds of competitors, like around 2 to 3% of them are turning pro, when it's typically a higher proportion of that. And I knew that, oh man, I'm not even sure I'm a guy who could turn pro at this show, let alone compete in the pro division. So how things went were really encouraging. But anyway, the 3 gentlemen who turned pro in the overall, the guy who won the overall and also the gentleman who took second to him, the top 2 of the 3 pro card winners, they decided to compete in the pro division immediately afterwards. The 3rd pro card winner decided not yet. He wanted to have more of an off season before jumping into the pro ranks. So we had 6 pros competing. So I was competing against 3 gentlemen from Taiwan, 1 from India, and 1 from Japan. And you had your 1 tall white guy from New Zealand / the US, standing a little bit like a sore thumb in terms of height, but I held my own. So it was a pretty cool comparison. The first thing that we do in the WNBF is we have our symmetry round. And they place you based upon how good your X-frame looks, muscular balance, front to back, top to bottom, side to side. And having been a judge and still being a judge, I could tell based upon where I was placed in this lineup, which you can see playing right now as I talk, in the symmetry round. And this is a stronger round for me. So with 6 athletes, you can't really tell if you're in the 1st or 2nd or 3rd or 4th or 5th or 6th spot because there's no dead center. But the head judge kind of gives an indication to the rest of the judging panel of where he thinks people or she thinks people should be placed based upon the movements. And we were all called out in numerical order, and then I was quickly moved just 1 spot away from the center. So I was rotated between what would typically indicate you're in either 3rd or 4th in the symmetry round, which is great. That's a great start. I was just hoping to place in the show, make the top 5 spot out of the 6 athletes and actually get a pro medal. In fact, I told Barbara shortly after winning my pro card, hey, guess what? We don't need to make any more spots in our home gym for my medals because realistically, I'm never going to take home hardware as a pro athlete. Catching a pump, no problem. And they've got me somewhere in either 3rd or 4th, at least based upon the movements from the head judge, assuming the rest of the panel mostly agrees with them. Then we go into the muscularity round, and here's where I can tell I'm starting to lose some points. And now I get moved to the outside. I'm getting moved a bit. There's some comparisons, and they've probably got me in 5th or 6th. And something that I need to work on in the muscularity round is figuring out how to make every single pose at least not look weak. And right now, the poses that I feel really confident in are pretty much everything except my ab and thigh and my front double biceps. The reason being is that I've brought up my delts so much that even though I'm not very wide, the cat shoulders can make me look like I have a pretty good V-taper and pretty good symmetry, so long as my arms are not over my head. But when I do a ab and thigh, and when I do a front double biceps, you can see that I look a little more narrow. And I don't have a big waist, but I don't have a really paper-thin, tiny tapering waist compared to my clavicle width. So it's really more of an issue of having a straight up and down rib cage and not very wide clavicles. I look bigger from the side, and I look bigger with my arms down because of my delts. So what I need to do and what I'm going to work on for my next 2 competitions is to really angle my body more on the ab and thigh, and I think I need to shift my hips so that it's harder to compare my waist to shoulders in my frontal bicep a little bit more. But to my own credit, I really held my own. I couldn't believe it. Somewhere between 5th and 6th in the muscularity round, somewhere between 3rd and 4th in the symmetry round. So I know I was probably going to be between 4th and 6th if you look at the averaging of the 2 rounds. And then they did call-outs. Now the call-outs, it's going to be based upon the field. And the first thing they did was they brought out Mongol and Show. This I could see it going either way, because Show is not the most symmetrical bodybuilder, but he is absolutely huge, and he came in condition. He just has freaky proportions. Like his quads, his adductors are giant, his most muscular is crazy, and he just has this density and this size to him. His glutes are huge, his hamstrings are huge, his calves are huge. Just incredibly impressive bodybuilder. But I do think, and no discredit to him, that his back is a little bit underdeveloped, and he struggles to pose it. There's not much of a lat spread that happens. There's no real change from his back relaxed to his back lat spread. And I think he was being beaten from the waist up from the back by most athletes. And Mongol is a little more symmetrical, maybe not quite as big from the front. I think it really came down to the wire, but ultimately Show ended up edging him out. But they brought those 2 out together because they're like, listen, this is our very clear top 2. So I got brought out in the second call out with the bottom 4, if you will, to try to sort out, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th place. And they initially brought me out, in kind of one of the center 2 spots, either 3rd or 4th. But then I quickly got moved to the outside. And I was like, oh man, I'm going to be relegated to 5th or 6th. And I was like, you know what? This is what you asked for. You're jumping into the pro ranks. You've made great progress, Eric, but you knew that it wasn't going to be enough to hang with these guys. So I was preparing myself for a 5th or 6th placing. But I was actually really pleasantly surprised in that I got the 5th place spot. And I am pretty sure that there were some votes that had me a little bit higher. Big shout out to Cliff Wilson, an awesome coach, an awesome guy. We've done seminars together, and he's always a straight shooter. He was in the audience. He was doing a seminar in Taiwan. He had athletes competing. And when I was off stage, he said, hey, listen, man, personally, I think because it was a very apples-orange comparison, I personally had you in 3rd. And I was like, what? Couldn't believe it. When I look back at the videos, I think 5th is very justified. And I think, somewhere in that 4 to 6 range is exactly what I anticipated. But I was just ecstatic to get a pro medal. And more importantly, I felt like I belonged more than when I did Worlds back in 2023, right after I turned pro. And I was wrong. I told my wife I would never take home pro hardware, and while this is a 5th out of 6th place spot, I got a WNBF pro medal. How cool is that? At the Asian Diamond Cup. So I think, the medal is cool, don't get me wrong, and beautifully crafted, by the way. Big shout out to WNBF Taiwan. But the coolest thing was when I got to see the stage photos, and when I saw the images. For example, this artistic side tricep shot that I actually made my Instagram handle, or this side chest, or this most muscular, or this back double bicep, this back lat spread. When I saw the pro pictures, which came out really fast, of me on stage, I did not anticipate. I'm going to leave this in. I'm going to leave this in, so we're not going to edit this out. I couldn't believe that all the work I'd put in over the last 21 years of training and competing since '07, that it was even possible. And I'd kind of counted out myself as potentially being a competitive pro bodybuilder. And it was so gratifying. It's still sinking in, obviously. This is, more than a week after the show. I love bodybuilding. So I think if I'd seen the pictures of me in this show when I was a young man in my 21, first starting lifting, my first season, when I was turning 24, it would have blown my mind. I wouldn't have thought it was possible, and I would have been like, "Yo, that's me. That's me in the future. That's legitimately competitive, good, like natural pro bodybuilder." Thinking, that I was at best going to be like the lanky guy who eventually got in and got a pro card. And now I'm seeing myself as, oh, hold on. This guy always peaks well. He poses well. He gets shredded, and doesn't have the greatest structure, but he's got pretty decent symmetry, and he's put on enough size to where if you don't, and if you're a high level pro and you're slipping, he might catch you. And that's just far beyond where I ever thought I could be. And I'm really, really, really hopeful that I can take it even further. And also the proof is in the pudding as a researcher, as being a quantitative scientist. The pictures are one thing, but like I said, the lowest weigh-in I saw was this dehydrated 80.1 this prep. And it was, after a 16-hour flight back from Doha. That is actually 2 kilos heavier than the lowest weigh-in I saw in 2023, when I don't think I was quite as dehydrated, but it probably was after one of those post-flights, a bit of, dehydratedness going on there as well. But that means I have a conservative increase in my stage weight of probably about 2 kilograms. That's 4.5 pounds, and that's a conservative estimate. So to think that from 2023 to 2025, I put on 4 or 5 pounds of stage weight, it's just so gratifying, because I look back and I turned over every stone, I turned over every rock, I was turning over grains of sand, I did everything I could. I look back with no regret, within my values and my schedule and my life commitments, and without sacrificing any relationships, and still doing all the things that are valuable to me outside of bodybuilding. I did everything. I did an incredibly high volume program. I pushed myself to the brink of minor injury, but not too far. I was on my P's and Q's with my diet. I set up everything to the best of my ability. I gave everything, and it paid off. And it paid off more than I expected. So it makes me think I can do this again. And also, more than that, is I don't think this is even necessarily my peak. I competed in Taiwan as lean as I've ever been, I think comparable to Worlds in 2023. But I do believe I can get a little bit tighter, and that is what we're doing. So I'm going to scale back. I get my pro medal. I place 5th. I'm ecstatic. I see the pictures. I can't believe it. But shortly after I got off stage, I got really lightheaded. And to the point where I was struggling to understand people talking to me, and I can barely even hear what they're saying. And my wife is looking at me. She's like, "You look off." And I'm like, "Babe, I need to sit down." So I was incredibly lightheaded, cognitively not functioning very well. And thank God it didn't happen on stage. But I was legitimately concerned for safety, that if I did the classic physique division coming up next, that I would pass out on stage. And then I started to get in my head a little bit, hold on, do I have a concussion? Was this more than just needing stitches? And I was just starting to get really, really concerned. So I made the decision to pull out of classic physique. And another interesting thing, I wasn't even that disappointed, because I felt so good about how I did in bodybuilding. And I realized that part of the reason I wanted to do classic physique is because I had counted myself out. I was like, oh, well, you're more strong in symmetry, but you're always going to be small compared to these bodybuilders. Maybe you're going to be better there. Instead of coming at it from a perspective of abundance, of hope, of, you know what, I think I'm better built for this classic physique thing. I can go in there and be a shark. I was like, oh, maybe this is a backup option if I can't be successful in bodybuilding. And I don't like that attitude. That's not a winner's attitude. And I didn't really realize it until I pulled out of the classic physique division, and I didn't care. And I was like, oh, I don't feel like I'm missing anything. And I realized that was part of the motivation. It's that still last little bits of my insecurity that I'm trying to remove from my mentality as an athlete. So I do plan on doing classic physique at Mayhem and Worlds. But part of me really, really, really just loves the bodybuilding division. I want to get as big, as shredded as I can be. And now that I've realized I've got more to give, I can get leaner, I can get bigger, I can improve my symmetry, I can improve my posing. There's still so much for me to give. I'm not done. And I can take it further than I ever thought. I'm just a little less motivated to do classic physique, I won't lie. I think my motivation may become more refined if I look at it from a more positive and less insecure perspective. But I'm just being real with you guys. I'm just being honest. So anyway, I did not do the classic physique division, and my apologies to WNBF Taiwan and all the athletes. I was really looking forward to competing alongside you. I kind of felt bad doing that last minute, and I'm normally a man who does what he says he's going to do, but I also didn't want to be a bad example and I didn't want to risk getting on stage and passing out. Nonetheless, I only did the pro bodybuilding division, and it was amazing. And the next day, I got to watch the men's physique athletes go at it, and that was incredible. That was the most competitive men's physique pro show I've ever seen, and it's at the same level as Worlds, because the vice champion and world champion from last year Worlds went head-to-head. They battled each other. In addition, there were just some other incredible competitors. Eza Wu, Eric, shout out. He got his WNBF pro card in the men's physique category at WNBF Australia in 2023, the same year I did. And this was his pro debut. And he went toe-to-toe with the world champ. And he placed second in their class. And then there was these two big classes of men's pro physique competitors. They took the top three. And I think he placed just outside of the top three. So anyway, 2-day event. Really, really cool. And then they did a after party. Karaoke, food, the whole 9 yards. That it was for the pros only, which they invited us to. So we really got taken care of, and I really did feel like a pro athlete. But I did not do the whole big food celebration thing. I was so motivated, and I got right back on my P's and Q's. And this is what I looked like the day after the show, morning of, what my physique looked like. And then 2 days later, after the Sunday and the Saturday, this is what I looked like. And this is basically where my physique is starting to get leaner for the next 4 weeks of dieting, going into the Mayhem, and then another 2 weeks for Worlds. I'm really, really pleased with how things are going. There was no step back in condition, and I'm in a great spot. And right now, the plan with Berto and Brian is to just chip away a little bit more. Even though I'm in the best shape of my life, we do think I can get a little bit leaner, and I've seen that. I'm actually the leanest I've ever been right now as I record this video, a week and a half after I competed in WNBF Taiwan. You have to be careful. You're at the point where it's very easy to burn the candle at both ends. I can feel it when I'm in a deficit immediately. If I go more than 2 days after having a high day, it can negatively affect my sleep. It's hard to train. My body does not want to use endogenous stores of fuel. There's so little body fat, and I chew through glycogen more preferentially. It seems like I flatten out very easily than the little bit of body fat I have left. Really all that I have left on my body is a bit on like the upper glutes, the lower back, and it's the type of thing that, you can't see it unless you're me. And I can make the glute striations I have, which are top to bottom, can get a little bit tighter and a little bit deeper, and there's levels to conditioning, and I want to reach that elite level. And I do think if I can drop another ½ kilo to 1 kilo of body fat before the Mayhem, and then we start eating up into Worlds, which is the plan, that I'll be able to bring a package that is even more competitive. And if I correct how I present in the ab and thigh and the front double biceps, who knows? But the Mayhem, some athletes who are coming out to compete in that are the best in the world. So I'm putting myself out there against the best 3 times this season. We're going to see where we stand, and we're going to see if we can move up the ranks a little bit more. So thank you so much for your support. I hope this recap was helpful, and I just want to say a huge thanks to WNBF Taiwan, all the athletes, and all of the coaches, everyone who supported me. This pro debut could not have gone better. I'm just humbled and honored, and it's still sinking in what I was able to accomplish, but I could not have accomplished it alone. I have a very supportive wife, mother, family, team, coaches, and all of the community. And I couldn't say more positive things about the 3D Muscle Journey community. So thank you for watching this, supporting us, and I hope that I can serve as some type of inspiration. And I will continue to give back to all of you because you've given me so much, and the sport has helped me grow as a person, not only just a bodybuilder. Love y'all, and I'll see you next time, shortly before the Mayhem or shortly after. We'll see, but it'll be the end of the season. We're coming down to it.